On May 21st, the Diocese issued some very carefully thought out and prudential guidelines for how to begin celebrating public masses once again, with a focus on social distancing, sanitation, and just prudential actions to keep folks safe as we gradually emerge from the COVID pandemic isolation. We've complied with all the government directives, everything that's been asked of us in the name of public safety and the common good. And we've done that gladly, knowing that the church is an integral part of the broader community. I'm grateful to all of our government officials and healthcare workers who have worked very hard to try to keep us safe in these last few months. After we issued our directives looking at 25% occupancy, Dane County issued a whole nother set of directives that limited masses to a 50-person cap. In all 10 of our other 11 counties, there were no caps, and last weekend, masses were celebrated in all those parishes at the potential of a 25% capacity. In feedback from our priests, we learned that all those masses went well, there weren't problems, people were cooperative, and safe practices were embraced. In light of that, we have been pursuing dialogue with our county officials to allow here in Dane County what has been allowed in all the other counties, namely 25% occupancy of our church buildings. Think of some of our larger parishes that seat upwards of 1,000 to 1,200 people. We're convinced we can safely accommodate more than 50 individuals in those churches for Mass. Our essential operation as Catholics is Sunday Mass, as you know. Sunday Mass for us is everything. And all the things online have been helpful, but it's not the same as going to Mass and actually receiving the Eucharist. The Eucharist is what gives us life. And when we look at all the violence and the difficulties and divisions and conflicts in our society today, we need Mass more than ever. We need people going to church. We need the love of God that is the only force that can heal what afflicts us. So I'm very pleased that today our county and city officials have agreed to allow churches, not just Catholic churches, but all religious assemblies to gather at the 25% occupancy, as is allowed for restaurants and all the other functions of our community. It's also a statement about religious freedom, that in our great American tradition, we have the right to assemble and to worship God, which is the fundamental human activity. We're not pursuing that recklessly. We simply wanted to be treated as every other institution, business in the county was being treated. So moving forward this weekend, throughout all 11 counties of our diocese, we will be at the potential of 25% occupancy. Having stated that, I want to restate the need for our elderly population and our at-risk population to still stay away from Mass. I think it would be prudential to still stay at home in these next coming weeks as we see the pandemic decrease, hopefully cases decrease and even cease as we move out of this social isolation. And I encourage everyone who goes to Mass to adopt the safe practices laid out in our protocols. I certainly join my voice to those of so many others as we look at the suffering, the conflict, as we look at the difficult issues of racism and poverty and violence. And in the middle of all of that, the church seeks to love, to build, to heal. But what we do outside of our church buildings as Catholics flows from what we do inside of our church buildings, namely the Mass, the Eucharist, Jesus Christ, his death and resurrection. And this decision this week helps us to do that in a way that's consistent with our beliefs and with equal treatment under the law for us as an integral part of the local community. For that, I'm grateful and certainly pledge the resources of our diocese to continue to work for the common good and for the healing of our society. I'm very grateful for the Becket Fund, which is a group of committed lawyers and professionals in regards to cases of religious freedom, who did all their work for us pro bono. So none of this effort cost the diocese a penny. For that, I'm grateful, and it allows us to continue to contribute our resources to the common good and to the flourishing of the diocese.